Hey everyone, and welcome to the Soul Star Cafe. My name is Ruth Perkinson, and I'm so happy everyone is here with me today. I have a very special guest who I just met about 2 weeks ago. Her name is Dr. Val Rhoden, and she's here with me today to talk about her journey, her spiritual journey, and her journey in education, and all that she's been doing for the betterment of her community and even more widespread out from that. So, Dr. Val, that's what you're called. Welcome to the Soul Star Cafe.
Thank you so much, Ruth. It's my pleasure to be here. I'm excited.
Yeah, I'm excited too. Well, you were actually introduced to me by a friend of ours, and she really was championing you and your book and all that you've been doing. And so she said, please have her on your YouTube channel to talk about what she's been doing. So here we are together. And what I wanted to do is start with a little bit about you and your journey to becoming an educational leader in your community. So maybe we could just start wherever you feel guided to start.
Thank you, Ruth. You know, it's always a pleasure to tell your story because I think we sometimes forget that everybody has a story and one is no greater than the other. So I'm humbly accepting the offer to tell you that I wanted to be an educator from a child. I would have the children sit in rows and teach when I was a child. So when I had to make a decision about college, I already knew I wanted to major in education. And because in high school, I took a lot of business courses, I was, I loved the business side of things. So I majored in business education at Florida State University. Now, there's some history behind that because I went to Florida State University in Tallahassee, Florida in 1969. And you know, that's in the throes of the civil rights movement. I was one of the first African American students to go to Florida State University. I came from a small town in Southern Florida, close knit family. I had boundaries that kept me from going far to the left or to the right. Raised in the church, gave my life to Christ at the age of 8 and knew what I was doing, even as a child, and knew what I was doing. So when I went to Florida State, it was really a cultural awakening for me because even though I had gone to an integrated high school, my community was still segregated. My church was still segregated. So I had to get accustomed to that, but I was able to graduate with honors and started teaching in 1973. And by the way, Ruth, I was 20 years old. I turned 21 in September and I started teaching in October. So I was just a few years older than my students.
Yes.
But I was so good at it. It was a gifting.
Mhm.
And because I guess I received it very young, I had chance to hone my skills. So I was an award-winning teacher. One day I was teaching in my classroom and my department chair came to me and says, Val, I just went to a meeting. There's a job for you at the district office. The job description is written just for you. I took that position and I was working with what the program we call School to Work. I was helping students transition from school to work. Instead of having them to be separate entities, we saw them as a continuum. So when you're in high school, you're taking courses towards a career that you would like to have. So it's not finish high school, train for a career. It was on a continuum, award winning in the state of Florida, the school to work program. Then one day I'm working in the district office and my boss tells me there's an opening for an assistant principal at a school, William H. Turner Technical Arts High School, and it's just being built. And it's going to be centered around career technical education, which is my passion.
Yeah.
Teaching students how to prepare for a career at the same time as they finish their high school degree. I interviewed once, didn't get the assistant principal job. I interviewed twice, didn't get the assistant principal job. Here we go, that powerful number three,
Yeah.
that power number three, but
Yes.
God.
Yeah.
On that third try, I became the assistant principal. I stayed at that school for 12 years, first as the assistant principal, then the vice principal, and then the principal. In 2008, the year before I retired, my school was recognized by U.S. News and World Report as one of the top 100 schools in the country.
Wow.
One of my greatest honors.
I bet that was a great, it feels like a great honor. Wow.
Yes. And all during these years of leading, I was leading from the inside out, which is the title of a book that I've written.
Yes.
Some people ask me, Dr. Val, what do you mean by leading from the inside out? I
Well,
mean
that's
leading
just
from
the
the heart.
question I was getting ready to ask you because I love the title of your book. And so, for those who are listening, the title of her book is called Leading from the Inside Out: Wisdom for Compassionate Leadership, right? Compassionate leaders. And so,
Correct.
yeah, tell me more about what that all means.
Okay. I wish I can remember where I read Leading from the Inside Out, because I'm an avid reader. I read not only the Word of God, but I read everything I can put my hands on. But somewhere I came upon that Leading from the Inside Out,
Yeah.
and it stuck with me because it spoke to my spirit.
Yes.
I've always been a passionate person
Yeah.
and a compassionate person.
Hmm.
But in my leadership, I was a compassionate leader.
Hmm.
Ruth, I can remember one day one of my teachers, it was a young man who was going through a divorce with three sons that he was very close to. He was going through so much in the court system. His wife was taking him for all he had and trying to keep the boys from him. He came into my office and just laid his head in my chest.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I just comforted him. You know,
Yes.
I didn't have any answers. I
Yeah.
just comforted him.
Yeah.
And to this day, he doesn't fail to tell me how much that meant to him.
Yeah.
I also had that same compassion for my students.
Yeah.
Because my students were in career technical education, they were going to job sites at the close of their school day. And some would leave a little early. One little girl named Brittany, no matter where she would find me on the campus before she left, and just come and put her head in my chest and
Oh,
feel my heartbeat.
yeah.
And she'd say, okay, see you tomorrow, Miss Rhoden. And
Yeah.
she'd go on to her job site.
That's amazing. What a
Compassion.
beautiful, yeah, so beautiful that there's a quote called those who are truly great are those who are most approachable. And that's what it feels
Mm,
like to me, what you were demonstrating for the faculty and for the students, and that they could approach you and they could actually give you a hug and you could hug them and you were leading from the heart.
exactly, exactly.
Yeah.
Now that you said that, Ruth, there's a little revelation that just came to me.
Yes.
I think I was giving what I didn't receive. And this is just coming to me now,
Yeah.
that how I wished I had had someone to say, Val, just come in, just
Hmm.
come in to me.
Hmm.
I had a very close relationship with my mother, but there were other people in my environment, in the work environment, in the school environment, the church environment. They would recognize my talents, but
Hmm.
sometimes I felt like they forgot that, but yet I was human too.
Right.
And I needed that come into me.
Right.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah,
Yeah, we all need that. We
absolutely.
need that extra love light from the heart to make that connection.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes, yes, yes,
absolutely.
yes.
Yes. So I was gonna just was that's a beautiful. Thank you for saying all that. And you've got such a beautiful, I'll just call it like a resume, but it's not really. It's just your life blueprint. And that is like a word that you used in the description of your book. And I just wanted to sort of come in and talk about that a little bit about how we can create an emotional blueprint, right? How people can create an emotional blueprint. That's one thing that you touch on in your book.
Yes.
Yes. And so I was going to just ask you, you talked last time we talked offline about tips for people who are looking to become compassionate leaders. And it seems like you told me you've got 30 tips in this book. And I was wondering if we could just touch on one or two, maybe three from your book that would be helpful to people listening today.
Okay, anyone in particular?
Just whatever you feel guided to
Okay.
talk about. Yeah, just anything that kind of comes up that a couple of tips that would be helpful for people who are getting into educational leadership or just looking to lead from compassion? Something that you've developed and designed and have written about.
Exactly.
Yes.
The blueprint for me meant in a given day, as a compassionate leader, you're confronted with many different scenarios. And what I tried to do was, I did, I put together a manual that had two components, the scriptures and my leadership experiences. And what I did was I brought you into me. I gave you wisdom from the word of God, and I gave you wisdom from my life experiences in hopes that you would find greater peace than I did when I was leading. Because I
Mm,
wrote it after I retired. And
mhm,
I wanted to leave something, a legacy for the profession that I still love so very much.
mm,
And so one of the tips that I talk about is you're not alone.
mhm.
Because many days I felt that I was alone. I had a wonderful secretary. She was like my left and my right arm. And she and we were a team, a true team. And I
Mhm.
remember one day I was having a very tough day. Demands from the top, demands from horizontally, and seemed as if I was pleasing no one.
Right.
She came into my office and she could read my spirit.
Yeah.
And I said, Miss B, I called her Miss B, her name was Bornstedt. Miss B, I don't know why I'm doing this. I'm not pleasing anyone, it seems like. She said, Miss Rhoden, remember the root word of administration is ministry. You're in this as a ministry to give back, and you are not alone. She reminded me of the students who would come by. One day, and she remembers, two kids came by and said, the Spirit told us to come to pray for you, Ms. Rhoden. Came to my office. These are
Yes.
high school students.
Yes.
And they prayed for me because the Spirit led them because the Spirit knew what I was going through. So
Right.
she reminded me that you're not alone.
Yeah.
And this too will pass. This day will pass. And know you're doing honorable work. And it's just one day out of 365 or 180 that we have in school. So you're not alone is one thing I'd like to tell
Yes.
those that want to become compassionate leaders.
Yeah.
Secondly, I want you to know balance.
Balance. That's a good one.
Because, Ruth, I lost track of that for a little while.
Mhm.
I woke up one Sunday morning and I was drinking my tea, getting ready to go to church. And I noticed the tea kept running out of the left side of my mouth. I'm saying, what's going on here? I went to the restroom and bathroom and I looked in the mirror and the left side of my face was collapsed. I had been diagnosed with Bell's palsy, that the doctor says it could be a virus at the root of it or it could be stress. When he said stress, I knew exactly what he was talking about. I'd lost that balance for a while. It was work,
Yeah.
projects, reports, meetings,
Right.
but that health scare. And by the way, my beautician prayed for me during noonday prayer in her shop. And as she prayed, the left side of my face lifted. God
Let
healed me.
let's Dr. Val, let's just stop right there and just a shout out to her. Wow, that's really
Please.
beautiful. What a beautiful report that, prayer in the Course of Miracles, prayer we know is the medium of miracles.
Yes.
And and with that beautiful heartfelt intention, with their minds joined with spirit, that we can really do anything with our beautiful thoughts and connected. And so I thank you for sharing that. That's very well received here.
Thank you. So welcome. So
Yes,
welcome.
yes, absolutely. So balance, yes, balance.
Balance.
And so I think it's very key. And so that was healed.
Mhm.
Wow, that's amazing. And was it
Amazing.
just healed in that one prayer session?
Right in that,
Wow.
Ruth, my oldest son had driven me to Fort Lauderdale, Florida, where I was having my hair done
Hmm.
because I couldn't drive, because I couldn't see, because the left side of my face was not, the muscles weren't operating.
Yes.
So he dropped me off and he went and ran some errands. When he came back, he saw the healed me.
Hmm.
And he went to Pastor Jerry and just held her.
Yeah.
Once I told him what happened and
Yeah.
thanked her so and thanked her
Yeah.
so.
Yeah. I'm so grateful you brought this up because we're in a time now where people really, I'm trying to get this message out that we have such power in our hearts and minds, joined with spirit, joined with our teachers, whoever you want to call them. We're a very open-minded, virtual cafe here. And so the power of prayer is so helpful and so healing. And I think we're coming into that place where we can just ask our brothers and sisters, hey, or if they feel inspired to say a prayer, that this is working in the now moment. And we can trust that it's working in the now moment. And people have these kinds of things happen. And because there's such super great belief in the power of love, the power of peace, I just thank you so much for sharing that.
Thank you. I
Yeah.
share it whenever I have the opportunity.
Yes, ma'am. Well, you're in the
Yeah,
right place.
definitely. And I hope it blesses someone. And
Yeah,
my third
absolutely.
and final one is about opposition.
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 Okay, let's talk about it.
This was a heavy one for me because I'm a compassionate leader, those that are not tended to look upon it as fluff, as being soft, and you
Mhm.
were met with opposition
Yeah.
because it's like the battle lines are drawn. Let me see how far I can move into her territory.
Right.
Whether it was an administrator, whether it was a teacher, and even with a student.
Hmm.
So I talked about how to deal with opposition. I asked a question. Do these people wake up every morning just trying to find a way to oppose us and to make our day go not well? Do they plan this? And I answered my own question. It's not something necessarily that's planned, but it is inherent in not understanding the true root of compassion. Because Ruth, a compassionate leader is one of your strongest leaders that you're going to find.
Right.
I I was super strong because I was strongly rooted in the word of God.
Right.
But the same compassion that our Christ showed Peter, who denied him 3 times, Judas, who gave him up to the Roman soldiers. The same compassion is the compassion I had for those that opposed me. I had teachers who opposed me simply because of what I looked like, simply because of how I dressed,
Yeah.
simply because how I talked,
Yeah.
that I breathed.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Yeah, there's opposition, resistance. You can call opposition like resistance, just sort
Yes.
of like that barrier. And so I definitely appreciate you bringing that up. And it's to be aware that people aren't always going to be in alignment, with how maybe you're where you're coming from. And so that's always something, an obstacle to be looked at and to discern over and to figure out, what's the best angle to approach this person or the situation. And so I love that. Thank you.
Thank you. And one
Yeah.
last thing on that point, Ruth. I
Yeah.
remember every year at the beginning of the school year, I would issue 3 non-negotiables. That's for my staff at our opening of school meeting. These are 3 things that I do not negotiate on because they were rooted and grounded in, first of all, the word of God, what is right, what is truth. And it was soundly rooted into the rules and regulations of the school district that I worked for.
Yeah.
And one of them is that we're going to treat our students with respect. We're
Respect.
going to treat our students with the same respect that we demand. I'm not negotiating that. So if a student comes to me and tells me that that student was treated unfairly, spoken to rudely, or whatever, I'm going to deal with that and I'm going to deal with it in a stern manner. So those non-negotiables set some boundaries. And I truly believe in boundaries because they are so healthy.
Hmm.
And that helped me to be compassionate and yet effective as well to carry forth the edicts of what I was hired to do.
Hmm. Absolutely. So respect and those healthy boundaries. What was the third one there? Did you have a
Well,
third
they
one?
they they differed each year according
Okay.
to
Gotcha.
what was, yeah, because so many each year brings its own.
Right, exactly, exactly. Well, I love the word respect because it always reminds me of being kind, being
Yes.
lovingly kind and love sometimes will set a boundary. Love sometimes says no. Love sometimes says wait. Love sometimes says not now. love sometimes says you got to go a different way, and so we're always operating. It sounds to me like the main idea, what I'm hearing or feeling with this conversation is you're really leading from that wisdom of the heart,
Yes.
and that is beautiful. Well, I'm really excited to talk to you. Just back to those three tips. The first thing is to remember that you're not alone, right? You're not alone. The second thing was balance. Very important to be balanced, in your own self-care, taking care of you. Because if you
Yes.
can't take care of you, you really can't take care of anybody else, right? And so I'm really
Right.
grateful that it was a lovely story that came out of that. And the third thing is just being aware of that there might be some opposing or some resistance or some opposition, and that's something that you're trying to come from in a loving way to help or assist and find different angles when you're dealing with different people and situations. Those are three great tips. And this comes from the 30 tips from your book called Leading from the Inside Out: Wisdom for Compassionate Leaders. And you really are a compassionate leader. And I love your story. I love that you went to Florida State University, and what an interesting time absolutely that was. Um, I was going to ask you one thing here as we sort of close out a little bit. Right before we hit the record button, you just mentioned that you were being honored by the Muvano project, that they just honored you this last week or so. And I wanted you to sort of bring up a little bit to the listeners about what the Muvano project is and what your involvement is in that.
I'm happy to. The word Mavuno in Swahili means harvest. The Mavuno Project is centered here in South Florida, and our goal is to use education to prevent human trafficking and to provide hope to those that have already fallen victim to human trafficking. The CEO and founder of the Muvano Project is the wife of one of my former students when I was a principal. And he recruited me to help with a project. And from that day, my heart, the compassion that I have for victims and preventing other victims, it just came back to the surface. Prevention education also is my compassion. In fact, one time I was a project manager for Informed Families, where we were doing prevention for drug abuse to help students not to fall into drug abuse. So it seems like life is just aligning itself. So the Mavuno Project is centered here, but we have mission work in foreign countries. We go into schools for students in elementary and middle and high school, and we give them educational tips on how to identify these people who groom children. We have a wonderful commercially devised video that shows just how scheming and how, I can't even think of the word, that these people can be. But we give them such great tips that they'll be able to identify that this person is trying to groom me and can be prevented from going into human trafficking. We also have victims who have already come out of that we support to help them with housing, re-entering into a life, introducing them to our God, to God, and a life well lived through Christ. And what I am on the board for education.
Mhm.
And recently we were awarded a $40,000 grant for our Safe Students, Safe Schools, Safe Communities program. And I was very instrumental in getting that grant, very instrumental in getting business partners to partner with us, not just for a project, but for a year and another year. We have a wonderful partnership with Grisham Smith, which is an architectural firm out of Dallas, but they have an office in Miami. They gave us in 2024 and immediately wrote into their budget for 2025 another donation to the organization. So that's my role in connecting the Mavuno Project with schools so that we can go in and make these presentations and to bring business partners in so that we can have continuous funds to help those that have already been victims and to prevent those from going into the victim.
Well, I'm actually getting a chill as you've been speaking here. Thank you, Dr. Val. Wow, that's incredible information. We have about 355 subscribers to this channel. So those of you guys who are listening to this interview today, if you are curious to know more about Dr. Val and her work and her books and the Muvano project, we'll do our best to put all of that in the description so that people can find out more about you. And please let us know, how can we connect with you and your work?
Okay. I have a Facebook Live video every Wednesday at 5:30. Val Marie Ward Rhoden is the name. And I teach the wisdom that the Spirit is teaching me, what I learned from studying, what I learned from Revelation. I teach it every Wednesday. I'm going into my third year,
Mhm.
and we have on an average 500 people who view. Now, we don't know how long they stayed or whatever, but it's growing.
That's
Also, you can reach me at my email address, which is dr.valrhoden@gmail.com.
mhm.
I'm working on my YouTube channel, so give me some time to get the technology going, and you can also reach me on YouTube. But the best thing to reach me in writing is through my email address, and if you want to hear my messages, then go to the Facebook every Wednesday. And the older ones stay up for like 30 days, so you'll see some of the older messages as well.
Well, that's beautiful. Wow, what a life you're living. And you're living from the heart, you're living from the wisdom, you're living from your talent, which is education. This is a leadership in education, which is we really need beautiful
Yes.
leaders like you helping the community, the diverse multicultural community, in all the ways that we can do to find and help. And I love it that you were inspired to write this book. We'll put the link to this to that in the description as well, and that you've been still working on trying to be so helpful to the disenfranchised, the marginalized, and I really champion you in that in those efforts. So thank you on behalf of this little
Thank you.
virtual cafe, bringing your message to all of us today. I think it's really beautiful. So Val, Dr. Val, you've got great tips. You've got great energy,
Okay.
you've got great wisdom, and we need a billion more people like you out there, a billion stars like you, shedding the light. And I love it that you were just, the Muvano project is beautiful. I'm so grateful that you talked about that today. As we close out shop today, close out this virtual cafe, having a virtual cup of coffee together, is there any last words of wisdom or anything that you'd like to leave the listener with?
I'd like to say two things. First of all, I was taught by my mother. My father died when I was 8, and I'm the baby of the family. And my mother taught all of us, there are 5 children, there were 5, to always say thank you, to be grateful. So, Ruth, let me say to you, thank you
Mhm.
for thinking enough of me to allow me to come to your platform. Oh, I'm getting the chills, and tell my story.
Absolutely.
So, thank you. The
Absolutely.
second
Absolutely.
thing is, second and final thing is, kindness doesn't cost us anything. And it means so much to those that receive it. No matter what we're going through,
Mhm.
be kind to
Right.
each other.
Right.
Be kind.
Absolutely. Dr. Val, I'm getting teary-eyed myself. Thank you so much for that end cap to our conversation. And we'll definitely have you back on to talk more about all that you're doing to help bring beautiful, loving education into the world to help people. And I'm seeing this in my mind's eye right now, the people who you've hugged and told them as you've ministered to them and told them that really everything is going to be okay. And I think that's what the Spirit's message is that everything is going to be okay. We might have some opposition or some resistance, but that's okay. We're going to get through it together. And I think being kind is a beautiful message. All right, Dr. Val. Well, we'll have you back on very soon.
I
And
hope so.
we'll put all of your information in the description box. And for those of you watching, thank you. And we hope you've been encouraged by this video today. And if you feel inspired, please share the information, hit the subscribe button, or just give us a like and a thumbs up. We do appreciate that. Thank you so much for being
Thank
all of
you.
you guys being with us here in the Soul Star Cafe. Thank you again, Dr. Val.
Thank you. Love you, Ruth. God bless you. Bye bye now.